Well, hello and welcome to this week's episode of the Plane Talking UK podcast. It's episode 393, and in this week's show, a DC-3 is involved in a gear-up landing. Virgin Atlantic launches its first long-haul destination from Edinburgh, and in India, passengers have to push an aircraft down the runway after a tyre ruptures. In the military, listener Sturman sent in some questions about the situation in Ukraine, which Armando is going to address for us. And the French make some big sales deals with the Rafale, and we update the situation with the UK F-35 that crashed into the Mediterranean. Joining me this week are Matt Smith in the PTUK studio, for starters.
Well, hello. Sorry, I'll bring my fader up. That'll work, won't it? That would be a helpful thing. How are we? All good?
Yes, very nice. It's great to be back, actually. I've been away for so many weeks now. We haven't actually spoken for a long time, have we?
I know. I think it's like the longest since you first joined.
I know.
It's been a busy old time.
Yeah. So how you been this week, Matt? You been busy?
Busy. Work's been a bit crazy. It's what we like to refer to as peak at the company I work for, as you can imagine. So frantically trying to get everybody's wine out to them in time for Christmas. And there have been some weather-related logistical challenges and a breakdown in a warehouse that has made that more challenging and difficult than it would ordinarily be. So to say that, it's going to be a fun couple of weeks, I think, and not necessarily in a good way.
Yeah, I'm sure, absolutely. Yeah, I've been away myself a little bit. Sweden for a week, Brussels, Antwerp, all sorts of places. I've done a few videos on some of those as well, which I'll be sharing at some point when I've got the editing machine going. And yes, it was quite a trip actually, but no, great to be back home again. That's the main thing.
I bet.
Yeah. But also joining us from the other side of the pond with a slightly unusual voice this evening is Armando.
Hey guys, you're gonna have to excuse me here because I'm just a little bit under the weather. So this is Armando's best friend, Barrymondo. If I have to step out, it's probably because I'm having a coughing fit. So be ready to jump in and save my bacon.
Step in at any moment.
Amazing. Was this anything to do with the APG 500th show by any chance?
Oh, highly likely. I think I ended up hugging everybody and kissing everybody. We all shared some wine and cheese as you do at the APG 500th in that swanky hotel we were at. Yeah. So pretty sure everybody got sick out of there. It was just a big old love fest.
Yeah. Petri dish of all sorts of bits and pieces. No COVID though, hopefully. I suppose that's the main thing.
Petri dish of aviation geekiness. And we're all taking medicine for it.
Absolutely right. Excellent. What a win.
Yes, of course, last week was the APG 500th show, which went down very well apparently. And I was doing some of the technical business down at Farnborough, which had its challenges from time to time, that's for sure. But we got a very good turnout down there as well. I think about 35 people showed up, which was marvellous. And then a few drinks afterwards in the hotel. But that was really good. So, great. A great time was happening.
Was the hotel nearby, or were you in the hotel? Or
yes, it was the Aviator Hotel just round the corner from the Fast Museum, which is where the event happened.
Nice.
Really great aviation museum actually, and if you haven't been there, see if you can get down there one of these weekends. It's a fascinating place, and also the volunteers that are down there. These gentlemen are so knowledgeable. It's absolutely marvellous. So it was really great to do all that. But yes, we are now back to reality now, I'm afraid. So, which I'm quite glad about. I'm glad I don't do one of those a week, that's for sure.
Yeah, I know. I can say it was your job at one point, Nev.
I know. I'm glad I
Can
don't
you
do it
imagine?
anymore.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh, dear.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, of course, we've got to thank everybody that's joined us in the chat room tonight. And just scrolling through, I can see Richard Adams, Lane Street, GB's Model Zone, Mazuz Kareem, Airliners Live, Jacob Darlington Brown, Dirk S, Plane Safety Podcast, you might have heard of him. Who else? We've got Masha in there as well. Jonathan Warner. It's good to see Jonathan last week. Great to see you, sir. And who else have we got there? Tony S as well. And Armando. He's able to write, but not able to speak.
Indeed.
Better at writing than speaking right
Yeah,
now.
and I must admit, I'm rather loving Dirk's comment. There says, Matt, please buy a Barry normalizer for Armando. He needs to keep that voice from now on for every show. There you go.
Too
Well,
expensive.
I was just thinking, actually, Matt, we've got to do an advert for somebody soon, haven't we?
Oh, we have, yes.
And we're thinking about who we should use for the voiceover. I think we've just found our contestant.
I think we
for
have.
that.
Yeah, absolutely. He seems less keen. I don't know why.
No, I know.
Yeah.
Exactly right.
Oh, and Neil Lamorne is saying, brilliant museum and a great night. Shame I had to dash as I had an early start. Got a beer with my APG glass now. There we go. That's what we like to hear.
Good lad. Excellent.
Indeed.
Yeah, it's good to see you, Neil. Thanks for coming down. And it was really, really good. And it's a great museum, as I said. And good evening to Bob Cronman as well. Hi, Bob. Hope you are well. Looking forward to seeing you soon somewhere at an event. I don't know
Absolutely.
where or what, but I'm sure
Fingers crossed.
get together at some point. So, well, as always, we kick off with the commercial aviation news. So, if everybody's ready,
Yeah.
let's go.
Let's get it on.
I think we need a song from Armando before we finish this evening.
Oh, no, you don't.
Yes, great idea.
Well, this first story is coming to us from a couple different sources, from avherald.com, adn.com. You guys, please tell me that you saw this video. Initially, Matt's going to play it out here in a second, but
Yep.
initially I actually thought it was not a real video. I thought it was a fake video. But
wow, really?
What happened was Trans-Northern Aviation Douglas DC-3, which was actually an R4D Navy version, registration November 28 November, was performing a freight flight, Trans-Northern 123 from Anchorage to Kodiak, Alaska, with 2 crew on board. Now, it was on the initial climb out of Anchorage's runway 7 left when the crew declared an emergency due to the failure of the right-hand engine. Now, they initially requested to come back to runway 7 left, requesting left turns only. Turning into the good engine was kind of a standard for multi-engine practice. But in the end, they decided to divert to Anchorage's Merrill Field. That's 4 miles to the northeast of Anchorage International Airport. So they reached a maximum altitude of about 900 feet. The aircraft ended up performing a gear-up landing on Merrill's runway 7, keeping that left wing up with the engine operating as long as possible. Now that crew was able to bring the aircraft to a stop on the runway. They landed perfectly centerline. There were no injuries. Now the aircraft sustained substantial damage. That's according to Av Herald. But to me, it actually looked like the aircraft was pretty well intact. I can only imagine it'll be back in the air within just a couple months. This airplane was a later version. It was manufactured in 1952, according to the FAA's aircraft registry. Now, Matt's going to play out that video if you have it.
Yeah, okay, here we go. So I think we've got some audio on this as well, so let's have a listen.
Transfer 123, Anchorage Tower 187, left line point. 7 left line point, transfer 123. Transfer 123, runway 7 left, clear for takeoff. 7 left, clear for takeoff, Trans-Northern 123. We'll need just a 20-second run up there. Transfer 123, roger.
Tower 28 Tango November, we just lost our right engine. We need to come back for a landing.
28 Tango November, roger, enter right downwind for runway 7 left.
Right downwind 7 left, 28 Tango November.
They said, well, cancel takeoff, fine. Well, 28 Tango November, winds are 0503. Did you want straight in for 25 left?
Tower Trans-Northern 123. We want a left turn, and circling back for runway 7.
Trans-Northern 123, left turn approved.
Left turn approved, Trans-Northern 123. Tower Trans-Northern 123. We're going to be entering Merrill's airspace here, continuing on in the north, trying to get a good climb rate.
Trans-Northern 123, it's approved in the Merrill airspace and Lake Hood segment. There's no traffic in Merrill. I got one guy in Lake Hood. We'll keep 5 of them.
Tower Trans-Northern 123.
My goodness
Plus
me.
2 Kilo Tango. Can you make a straight in for an east?
Okay, we'll We'll leave it there. I
to
mean,
the
that's
west, there's a
quite an
DT3 on the
amazing
low
incident,
level.
though, isn't it? And I mean, again, I'm sort of amazed at the fact that there's been no injuries or anything like that. With, I mean, that was almost like a textbook landing.
Yeah. Now, to be honest, this is, I don't know how many podcast hosts can say this, but I do have a type rating in the DC-3. It's surprisingly simple to fly on one engine. I think it was kind of designed that way. You know, you had 19-year-olds and 20-year-olds flying this thing in World War II, but the decision making that these pilots went through and instituted and implemented, it was just truly amazing, because they, you know, challenging situation. It's a freighter. They never fly freighters empty, so I can almost guarantee they were at max weight to be able to control the airplane, make the decisions they did. Now, the reason that they landed gear up was to reduce the amount of drag on the airplane. So what apparently happened was the right engine failed. Normally, that engine, the propeller is supposed to feather. That is, it's supposed to turn and go into the wind. Think of it if you're sticking your hand out the window of your car while you're doing 60 miles per hour. It's the difference between putting your hand, you know, straight out and the wind pushing it back, or turning your hand like this into the wind and having less resistance. That's what the propeller is supposed to do. It's supposed to turn into the wind. It did not do that, which reduces the controllable the minimum controllable airspeed of that airplane significantly. So they made the decision to keep the gear up in order to maintain more airspeed and more controllability and get it onto that runway.
Wow.
So, yeah, really, really well done. It's a bit of a non-standard emergency. You know, I can't wait to see a little bit more and get a pilot interview, but decisions like that are usually made by pilots with a little bit more experience, more flight time. Yeah, because, you know, you have a checklist and you have a single failure, but this was a, you know, kind of a compound failure. I was like, okay, well, the prop didn't feather. I don't know that there is a checklist for a prop fail to feather on the DC-3. I know there isn't in the Basler. So, yeah, well done to these pilots, and I can't wait to hear from them firsthand.
Yeah, I think the other thing to bear in mind, of course, is that they only reached an altitude of 900 feet. So that's not a lot of wriggle room at all when you're in that situation. I'd imagine.
No, not at all.
Indeed. Actually, Jonathan Warner's got a question for you, Armando, as well. He's saying that apparently that's an unusual shaped tail for a DC-3. Can you shed any light on that?
I think the R4Ds, the Navy version, had a bit different tail. It's not the, yeah, I noticed it too. It's almost like a square-tailed Cessna 182. But I think it was just the Navy versions had that.
Just a different tail. And just one thing I'd like to say, obviously, you may have noticed there was a little bit of strong language in that video. Apologies if anyone was offended by that.
Oh, I didn't notice any.
Yeah. Oh, well. Now there's a couple pilots that got super excited at the
absolutely. Well, no, and of course, what we, again, I mean, you know, this is the reality of an incredible situation unfolding in front of them. So, you know, I mean, you know, this is the thing, and it's, you know, it sort of shows really that those reactions show to me like what an amazing achievement that was. To just sort of, I mean, because it sort of touched around, and again, like Dirk is saying, it's as if they practiced it every single day. You know, it's that same thing, isn't it? Sort of hit the deck, like, well, it didn't hit the deck, did it? I mean, it very smoothly sort of glided along the along the situation. I mean, it's an incredible achievement by the pilots, and you know, goes to show the importance of all that really intense training, doesn't it?
Yeah, and experience.
Absolutely, experience.
Further, the R4D -8 had that tail.
Okay.
It was a Super DC-3, a C-117. It's a little bit upgraded from the regular C-47.
Nice. Okay, shall we move on then?
Yeah, next story is for you, Matt.
Right, yes, okay. Yeah, so this is on the AV Web, a couple of sources on this one, the avweb.com and flightglobal.com, and the headline, S7 A320neo was only partially de-iced before in-flight upset. So shortly after takeoff from Magadan Airport, just north of the Sea of Okhotsk in far eastern Russia, S7 Airlines Flight 5220, operated by an Airbus A321neo with 202 passengers and 7 crew members on board, began having problems. The crew declared an emergency due to the airframe icing. According to a flight data recorder readout posted on social media, not yet confirmed to be from Flight 5220, the Airbus crew disconnected the autopilot shortly after takeoff, after a slight descent that began about 5 minutes after reaching an altitude of 8,784 feet.
Doesn't that just explain the Airbus right there? the crew disconnected the autopilot shortly after takeoff.
Oh, so much material, but so little time.
Absolutely. Anyway, the single aisle airliner spent the next 7 minutes in chaos as multiple flight parameters showed rapid oscillations for about 7 minutes, according to a narrative posted on Catherine's report. The pitch altitude oscillated with minus 23.9 degrees and plus 43.6 degrees being the most extreme values reached. In that period, the aircraft rolled left and right, with extreme values being plus 49.8 degrees and minus 91.1 degrees. The data published by Catherine's report showed the aircraft rapidly climbing from 4,699 feet to 14,351 feet, then quickly descending to 5,084 feet. From then on, altitude remained difficult to control. Read the narrative, with the aircraft climbing back up to 13,748 feet and descending to 4,556 feet at an average rate of around 1,000 feet per minute. That seems like a lot. The crew made 2 unsuccessful attempts to land back at departure airport, though it's unclear why the attempts were unsuccessful. Eventually, the crew were able to climb to and maintain a normal cruising altitude and continue westbound for a safe landing at their destination airport 5 hours after takeoff. The original destination was considered... landing at Irkutsk 5 hours after takeoff. The original destination, Novosibirsk, sorry, I'm terrible with the Russian the pronunciations, was considered unreachable due to the extensive flight time at low altitude while attempting the emergency landing at Magadan. Federal Air Transport Regulator stated that the S7 Airlines aircraft was parked for 2.5 hours in heavy snowfall, leading to a large amount of snow accumulating on the upper fuselage. After the windshield heating was turned on, it says the snow melted, resulting in water runoff from the glass. This ran down to the forward fuselage and, during taxiing in freezing conditions, reformed as ice ridges in front of the pitot static sensors. Rose Aviation said the distortion of the smooth airflow into the sensors resulted in unreliable readings from 3 air data systems after the jet became airborne, causing discrepancies in the airspeed information. The aircraft systems degraded, disengaging the autopilot and autothrust and presenting flight control problems for the crew. They said that the de-icing of the wing surface and the stabilizer carried out in 2 stages with Type 1 and Type 4 de-icing fluid was done in accordance with the decision of the aircraft crew during preparations for departure on the 2nd of December. Takeoff with a thick layer of snow on the fuselage surfaces and the cowls of the engines in conditions of turbulent and icing resulted in a threat to fly safely. It adds, they also say that it has obtained enough preliminary information from air and ground recordings, examination of the de-icing fluid and video surveillance at Magadan to begin taking preventative measures. So, I mean, this is one of those situations where I guess we're very lucky that it wasn't more serious. Although it must have been very scary at the time, of course, with it taking these very extreme alterations. I mean, is this one of the problems about being so reliant on technology, if you like, in terms of, I mean, if this craft was being flown completely manually, would you have had those extremes in altitude and things like that? This is not something I really understand, which is why I'm asking this sort of slightly odd question, really. I guess I'm firing this one at Armando a bit.
Yeah, no, they probably they did end up flying it manually.
Yeah.
The way this happened, so ice is very important. It's very important to remove any ice from the airplanes. Now, when I first read this, I was just wondering if they had completed the de-icing process as required. There was a really famous crash in Washington, D.C., Air Florida, 737-200 that crashed into the Potomac River because they executed the de-icing process too early. They didn't use the right de-icing, and they continued to fly the airplane with icing on it, and also never used full power. So there's very rarely to use full power on these aircraft. They never pushed the throttles up, and it ended up crashing into the river. So that was one of the situations that came to mind when I was first reading this. Now, as the article continued on, they figured out that what actually happened was that the ice from the windshield came down, melted, and then refroze right in front of the pitot tubes. That's pretty unique. That's something that you wouldn't expect to happen. And me, I don't know that I would have thought of that as a cause, right? Especially since you did the de-icing process, right? And they did type 1 and type 4 de-icing fluids. They just have a little bit different viscosity. So type 1 being the thinnest de-icing fluid, type 4 being the thickest. So ice will not accrete onto the surfaces. So as a pilot, they probably were a little bit thrown off, knowing that they had de-iced everything appropriately. I would have never expected the ice from the windshield to melt. Any of those ridge lines that form in front of the surfaces. I mean, you could have ice induced roll upset from ice building in front of the ailerons, right? So if you don't de-ice that correctly, it disrupts the airflow. If you could have a tailplane stall from ice accretion in front of the tailplane, but ice in front of the pitot tubes because they're heated. And you have the pitot tube heat on. That's a pretty rare situation that I'm sure these guys were not expecting.
So forgive my again. This is the trouble when the person sat in this chair literally knows nothing about aviation. Why the extremes in altitude? I mean, were there physical extremes in altitude, or was it merely incorrect readings?
No, the airplane probably tried to rectify itself,
right?
Because there was wrong data. This is like Air France 440.
Okay.
So they were in that case, their pitot tubes were completely frozen over, but the airplane is trying to right itself, and the crew is trying to figure out what's going on.
Right.
And it eventually goes. Some Airbus person correct me, but I think it eventually goes into direct law once they kicked off the autopilot, and it's reading signals from the air data computers that are not matching up to each other. Then the aircraft just reverts back to, hey, I don't know that the data coming into the computers is correct. So it reverts back to direct law, which is a manual control.
Yeah. Okay. And so once they've taken manual control of the aircraft, then essentially they're able to sort of get things to sort of fly in a fairly level sort of. I guess the other risk is, I suppose, if the instrumentation is playing up, they don't really know exactly how high or low they are, other than sort of looking at the wind show.
They don't know how fast they're going.
No.
Plus, this doesn't say if they're in IMC conditions. So that's another thing where they may not have had a horizon.
Yes.
To look at, to realize that they were in an what do you call it, an upset recovery situation. Yeah. Because they're getting all the wrong data. The crew probably did everything that they knew how to do. And to Richard Adams in the chat room asks, the heaters on all pitos failed at the same time. They probably didn't, but what was happening was the disturbed airflow going into the heated pitot tube was giving them wrong data.
Right. Gosh.
I seem to remember as well, you referred to the Air Florida Flight 90, wasn't it, at the Potomac? Subsequently to the NTSB investigation, one of the inspectors, I mean, it's a slightly different set of circumstances, I think, but he did say, if you don't depart with a clean aircraft, you're probably going to die. And,
right.
I think that probably is the best summary out of all of it. Now, clearly in this case, there was some mitigating circumstances. And there, when it comes to de-icing any kind of aircraft, but especially commercial transport, jet aircraft, there are very set procedures in place about how long the fluid is valid for and whether you have to go back and de-ice again with different types of fluid. There's a whole load of stuff to go through.
Yeah, it's called the holdover time.
Yeah.
And type 4 de-ice fluid, at least here in the US, I don't know about Russian, but it's anywhere between 35 minutes and an hour and 15, depending on how heavy the snow is falling. We only use type 1 de-ice fluid, which is essentially 5 minutes for a holdover time.
Right. And again, forgive my naivety here. Is there a difference in the standards in terms of de-icing in different locations in the world, or is it the same, it's a sort of an agreed formula, if you like, and you've got the type 1 and the type 4 depending on the conditions that you face?
Yeah, I can only imagine that it's actually set by the manufacturer of the aircraft. So I'm sure
Right.
Airbus is the one that sets, because they've tested that aircraft and its aerodynamics with ice. So it's probably, if they have a operating procedure, it's probably based on Airbus's research and numbers.
Wow. Okay. Thanks for that, Armando. I appreciate it. As I say, unfortunately, lots of sort of questions from me. I'm pleased that nobody was hurt. It's a fascinating sort of story to follow, really, and I guess there'll be more coming out of this in the coming weeks.
Matt, there are no bad questions, and I gotta admit, this is a great example. If you are, as we enter the winter flying season, there are many cases, not many, there have been a few cases where a passenger in the back looks out onto the wing and they see ice or snow, and sometimes all it takes is just a quick question of, hey, is that normal? And even a passenger sitting in the back could potentially save a flight. That could be a cover that's loose, it could be an engine cover, flight control that doesn't look quite right, especially us av geeks, everybody's sitting in the chat room and listening to this podcast. It does not hurt at all if you don't feel like everything is right, or you have a question on something. You may be the one person that notices something that the crew doesn't.
That the crew hasn't. Yeah, no, that's fair enough. Interestingly enough, Pip's in the chat room. As evening, Pip. He's saying it's a skill that requires proper training. I've seen some woeful de-icing in my time. It's it is a proper skill, isn't it? There's no two ways about that.
Absolutely.
Anyway,
but do you remember last year we were talking about there was a Ryanair plane in Italy and they were de-icing it with buckets, like they had buckets of hot water and they were just throwing it onto the wings. It's a terrible idea. It's just going to refreeze. But
wow.
Do you guys remember that story? We did that.
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
I mean, I can't remember what I had for breakfast, so nothing personal on that one. But there we go. All right, fascinating. Let's move on if we can, Nev.
So yes, moving to warmer climes.
Oh, good. I'm so because I'm feeling positively chilly. I'll be.
Yeah, I know. Absolutely. This is from routesonline.com, and it says that a Virgin Atlantic Airbus A330 landed in Barbados on December the 8th, having departed from Edinburgh earlier that day, making the first ever international flight operated by the carrier from the Scottish capital. The Edinburgh to Barbados route, which will be operated twice weekly, becomes the only non-stop connection between Scotland and the Caribbean. Virgin Atlantic additionally plans to operate twice weekly service between Edinburgh and Orlando, MCO, from March 2022. Virgin's trusted Airbus A330-300s will serve both flights, and these planes come equipped with 31 seats in upper class, 46 in premium economy, and 185 seats in standard economy, which is a total of 264 passengers. The new service to Barbados aims to capture the pent-up demand to visit and reconnect with family and loved ones, as well as sunseekers looking to explore the idyllic island with easy onward connections to the wider Caribbean, Edinburgh Airport said in a statement. The service will also offer an efficient cargo service, presenting new opportunities for companies looking to export and import Scottish products between Scotland and the Caribbean. Virgin Atlantic noted that Scottish whisky with smoked salmon will be amongst the products it will transport to Barbados. Scotland's Transport Minister Graham Day said that the airline industry has been severely impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic, adding it's very encouraging to see the shoots of recovery with this new service. So that's a nice temperature variation, isn't it?
Cool, yeah.
Edinburgh to Barbados and Orlando. That's my kind of trip. Although coming home is a bit depressing.
I bet, yes. It's, I mean, it's one of the things that, I mean, from the few sort of, I think Sharm el Sheikh was where I went, where it was most noticeable, and we were flying from Luton. It was a proper chilly, icy cold day that we were leaving Luton. I think it was the sort of like one of the coldest Octobers in years or something silly. And we'd flown out to Sharm el Sheikh, and when they opened that aircraft door, that heat wave is the one thing that was my, like, not, I mean, don't get me wrong, we had a lovely holiday, but my lasting memory of that was when they opened that door, because it was like bright sunshine and all that, and it was just like, whoa.
Yeah, it's just like opening the oven door and putting your face in it. And I think, Dallas was the closest I got to that. I think in 1994, I think it was. And the heat was just unbelievable.
I can imagine.
But incredible.
Indeed.
So, Armando, if your voice is up to it, you've got the next story.
All right, this one also came to us from a couple different sources, from vacationer.travel, from the Points Guy, from united.com, and a couple of United posts on Facebook. United's LGBTQ plus business resource group, labeled Equal, staged United Airlines' inaugural Pride flight on Saturday, December 4th. This fully staffed by LGBTQ plus identifying employees, from the pilots and gate agents to the ground operations crew. The flight was organized to raise awareness and highlight the contributions of the LGBTQ plus community, and to honor World AIDS Day by those living with AIDS and HIV among their employees and customers. To commemorate the 40th anniversary of the first ever recorded case of AIDS, Flight 1991 was selected as the nod to the year when the red ribbon was first used as a symbol of remembrance for those impacted and lost to the AIDS crisis. But this commemorative flight took off from Newark's Liberty International Airport to Chicago O'Hare with a little bit of fanfare. Prior to the flight, customers and employees were treated to brunch. Oh, how nice. And a live performance by the Tony-nominated actress Jen Kalea from the Broadway show Come From Away. That's the really good show about 9/11. Attendees also wore red ribbons and were encouraged to donate to LGBTQ plus causes via the Miles on a Mission program. While boarding, customers received gift bags with swag, a United Pride pin, a rainbow popcorn made by the LGBTQ plus owned Epic Popcorn as an extra snack. Upon arrival at O'Hare, the fire department there met the flight for a water cannon salute, and it hit the light just right, just perfectly to make a rainbow effect with the stream of the water showering the arriving aircraft. Now, after deplaning, the customers were met with clapping and cheering from employees. They also received colorful leis to further celebrate their participation on this historic flight. This United Airlines Business Resource Group, Equal, is an employee group to support lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, and ally coworkers. This group boasts more than 1,000 members and employees from every labor group, division, and hub airport. There you go. And Matt put up some pictures. Looked like a all-around fun flight. Absolutely. Maybe United should make all their flights this much fun.
I certainly like the idea of brunch. That's a lovely thing. I think more people are excited about
brunch
that.
And a performance at the gate.
Absolutely. What's not to like about that? Wow.
Have you noticed, Matt, that the longest stories in this week's episode are all being read by
I think they are.
Armando?
Absolutely.
So,
Thank
if you ever get to the point where you need to bail out,
Yes, absolutely.
do holler. And
We're
we'll,
primed and ready. Yes.
We'll come
Yeah.
to your
I think John owes me a beer for that.
Yeah,
one.
absolutely.
Or a nice hot tea with honey.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, or a hot toddy. I think that's probably what you need more than anything else.
I don't know if she's listening or not, but my lovely wife actually brought me a hot tea with honey
Oh, brilliant.
in the middle of that in my Ruth Bader Ginsburg cup.
Love it. I hear voice. Ah, bless.
Oh,
All
geez,
right.
that was on camera.
Yes, it was. Very good. Well done. You've been caught out being nice to your wife. Outrageous. Okay, we'll move on to the next story then, if we may. And the headline is Defibrillator Rushed to Cockpit as Medical Emergency Forces Westjet Flight Back to Calgary. So this is headtopics.com is the website. A plane flying from Calgary to Atlanta Monday afternoon was forced to turn around due to a medical emergency involving the pilot. In an email statement, WestJet spokesperson Madison Kruger said EMS met the flight upon arrival and the pilot was removed from duty. Another pilot on board took control of the plane. All WestJet flights have two pilots to ensure that should any illness occur in the flight deck, there is an additional pilot on board to ensure the continued safe operation of the aircraft and the safety of our guests and our crew, Kruger said. EMS said they responded to the airport terminal around 1:25 p.m, but the paramedics had no patient contact and left the scene without request for EMS assistance. This advertisement has... Edmontonian John White was a passenger on the flight, sitting 4 rows from the front of the plane. He first realised something was awry on the flight after noticing concern among flight attendants, one of whom brought a first aid kit and a defibrillator to the cockpit. Then they made the call for if there was a doctor or nurse or EMT on the plane, and as luck would have it, one doctor came forward and 2 nurses, White said. He said a pilot on board in the passenger area also made his way to the cockpit. White said the pilot was brought out of the cockpit and set down as medical volunteers treated him. The pilot appeared to collapse shortly afterwards. They were able to get him talking again after they got him on the floor, but they were working on him pretty feverishly, White said. WestJet declined to provide details on the illness or the current condition of the pilot, citing privacy concerns. The airline said 70 passengers were on board the flight, with some accommodated with travel Monday. The airline added additional Calgary to Atlanta and Atlanta to Calgary flights for Tuesday after the incident. A scramble and some lengthy queues ensued after the cancelled flight, White said. White praised the pilot and medical professionals on board for their handling of the incident and safe carriage of the flight back to Calgary. Quite the story actually there. I mean, it's thank goodness there were lots of medical professionals on board there. Also, the access to another pilot who happened to be on board, that I think is quite a useful thing. And also, I mean, I know we've spoken. This is slightly off topic here, but I mean, I remember having a conversation from an article we read, probably quite a few months ago now, where we were talking about single pilot operations. I mean, surely this is the prime example of why that must not happen.
Yes, and I think there's different kinds of types of flying as well, where small operators do have single pilot operations, but anything which is of commercial jet type size or even large turboprop does need to have 2 pilots. I think the other key thing here is the defibrillator on board. From what I'm hearing, more and more airlines are having these as a standard fit on board their aircraft now. And gosh, here's a good example of why you might need it. Definitely.
Love it. Yeah, I mean, thank goodness. Well, I mean, hopefully the pilot is very much on the mend, yeah, it sounds like he was certainly getting A1 treatment in the cabin there. So, yeah,
definitely. So moving on to the next story. This is a good story because it involves wine.
Oh, hello.
We like that.
We do, especially a nice Malbec. Hey.
Certainly, yes. And it's on the drinksbusiness.com website, come from the headsforpoints.com website and the Daily Mail. British Airways is looking for a master of wine to help transform its wine offering, which was previously described as rock bottom. Until 2010, BA employed Jancis Robinson, amongst others, to choose the wines that would be available on board its flights. However, the carrier opted to appoint a single exclusive carrier for each of its three classes, and Robinson subsequently resigned. In a 2019 article by the Financial Times, Jancis Robinson is quoted as saying, in 2009, the then head of BA, Willie Walsh, decided to abandon the policy of choosing wines on the basis of what they tasted like, and instead, to cut costs, appointed a single exclusive supplier for each of the three classes. In 2010, I resigned. BA's wine buying is currently in the hands of two young Frenchmen working for their parent company IAG, who have no wine buying experience. The dire state of their budget can be judged from a recent discussion on flyertalk.com. The Villa Maria Sauvignon Blanc, then on offer in BA First Class, was spotted in Morrison's at £5 a bottle and two for £9. Even more recently, an Argentine Malbec that retails for $10 was served in First Class. All submissions in a recent First Class tender for wines over €6 a bottle from the cellar door were rejected, and the budget for forwarding buying of claret used to be €25. Now the signs that BA are ready to take its drinks offering seriously again, after a report in the Daily Mail stated that the airline is looking to recruit a master of wine to overhaul its drinks selection. Though it must be said that the airline itself said, as quoted in the Mail, they're looking for a passionate individual with a strong knowledge of all drinks categories, particularly wine, which does not necessarily suggest that they are specifically looking to recruit a master of wine. And there are currently 418 Master of Wines based in 30 different countries. Isn't that extraordinary? But of course, sometimes just the inexpensive bottle of wine can be quite tasty, can't it? And it depends what it tastes like at altitude, not what it's like on the ground.
Indeed.
Well, I gotta say, if there's a position open, only one of us on this podcast is a master of wine.
Well, yeah, that'd be Nev, not me. Got nothing to do with me. I mean, although I must admit that a master of wine is actually a surprisingly rare thing, because we actually have a master of wine who is in charge of all of our wine, obviously, for the company that I work for. And there are, I think it's something ridiculous. Like there's only like 3 or 4 here in the UK. It's it is a very, very seriously sort of, like, it's a very major job. So you're not going to apply? Good Lord, no, absolutely not. No, I'm more worried that our current master of wine might, if the salary is good. Because it's I think that where I'm getting at with that is I think it could well be not a very easy position to fill. If you saw what I mean, because there'll be, I think people underestimate what a skilled profession that is. If you see what I mean, and you're going to have to be offering these people big bucks, because most of the masters of wine are currently working for, pretty lucrative wine companies, because frankly, that's how it works.
That's what they do, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I think BA are going to have their big checkbook out if they truly want to go down this route. I mean, I think it's a good idea because I mean, a decent pairing of a red or white wine with a meal can make or break a meal. In my experience, I mean, if you get that pairing wrong, then disappointment all round, really. So
I suppose it depends how much you have, doesn't it?
I mean, there is that. Yes, absolutely, there is that. Certainly worth a mention. You've got your filter on today, I think, Nev. You've got your cloudy filter
on. What's gone on with my camera? It's gone extremely weird. The autofocus is just sort of not doing a very good job of it. So I'll have to have a fiddle.
Yeah, as I say, it's a bit like he's got like the soft filter on, so that
or someone's rubbed Vaseline on the lens.
Possibly, who knows? Absolutely.
Never a good thing. I'll try and fix that in a second.
Excellent, lovely. Okay, well, we're right. Where are we off to next?
Next story is Armando.
Yeah, okay. So you're gonna have to pardon the festooned language in this.
Oh, okay.
I think they may have taken some literary liberties in writing this, but this is from the NewYorkPost.com. In a technique seemingly reserved for automobiles, Nepal Airlines passengers were forced to push down on their airplane after a pop tire stranded it on the tarmac. A video of the airplane-esque scene boasts more than 800,000 views on TikTok, which is exactly how we judge things now. The surreal scenario occurred after a wheel allegedly burst on a Terra Air jet. Okay, allegedly, it either did or it didn't. And it wasn't a jet, it was a twin Otter. That had just landed at Bajura Airport from Simkat in Humla, according to the Indian Express. As a result, the lightweight twin Otter aircraft was left stranded in the middle of the runway, preventing other airplanes from departing. As that facility lacked the tools to move the airplane, passengers and security personnel had come together to resolve the situation. The resulting 20-minute footage shows the intrepid team pushing the green and white aircraft, they put jet here, down the runway like ants with a caterpillar as bystanders cheered them on. Salvation finally came after another airplane arrived from Nepalganj carrying spare tires and engineers, according to the Indian Express. They outfitted the marooned aircraft with a new wheel and then flew both aircraft to Nepalganj. Suffice it to say, social media was impressed by the impromptu tow team's resourcefulness. Hats off to all those pushing to move the airplanes, wrote one fan under a Twitter repost of the clip. Matt, did you get the pictures for this?
No, is the short answer.
Okay. Well,
let me see what I can do.
No, it's essentially there's some good pictures from the video that show basically one person on every square inch of that aircraft pushing it off the runway.
Wow. I mean, that just seems like bonkers. I've got to be honest.
Yeah.
That seems absolutely bonkers. That's something that would be. Oh, I see what you mean. Oh, for goodness. Wow. Okay, I'm just gonna pop the website up for a moment there, because this has to be seen to be believed. Almost, this is just bizarre. There you go. This is from the New York Post website directly. They're literally pushing. I mean, it's a at least it's not a jumbo. I suppose there is that, but
correct. Despite them calling it a jet, it is not a jumbo.
No.
A jumbo twin otter. There is no such thing.
No, indeed.
Wow. But yeah, good for them. There's a lot of airplanes that you can put a little manual labor into it and push them by hand.
I hope somebody bought them a drink afterwards. I think they deserve it after all that. Goodness me.
Yeah, that's right. I'm sure Terra Air probably compensated with a free ticket or something like that.
I should hope so. At least. At least.
A lot of times this happens because of feet on the brakes.
Right.
If you try to land an airplane with your feet on the brakes, it's going to pop the tire. So
okay.
I'm not saying that I know that's what happened, but
no.
You're not saying that you've ever done that, Armando? Is that what you're saying?
I've bald spotted a couple tires in my life. I mean, actually, you can do it in a 182 pretty easy.
Yes. A bit like being a 50 pence piece by the time you finish.
Oh, blimey. Cozy. Yeah.
Okay. Dirk has a great point. This would have been a great caption.
It would have been a great caption, this, isn't it? It may well be a great. It may
I was
well
gonna
still
say,
be one.
It's never too late, is it?
Absolutely.
Never too late.
No, I don't think we did one this week. We should have. It was a bit of a fail. I think we could have done, couldn't we?
Yes, exactly.
Never mind.
I'll take the next story.
Okay.
It's from freightwaves.com. And it says that Air Canada rushes first freighter into service to supply flooded Vancouver. In a change of plans, Air Canada on Thursday operated the inaugural flight of its first dedicated freighter to Vancouver, with a full load of supplies to help British Columbia cope with flooding and landslides that have disrupted freight, rail and truck transportation. Israel Aircraft Industries delivered the converted Boeing 767 cargo jet to Air Canada's Toronto hub on Sunday. The aircraft was originally scheduled to fly its first mission to Frankfurt, but Air Canada Cargo deployed the aircraft early to airlift goods to the Frankfurt area. To the Vancouver area, I beg your pardon. Air Canada said it plans to operate 12 trips between its Toronto and Vancouver cargo hubs with its all-new all-cargo aircraft. Our teams have been working extremely hard over the last several days to get our freighter into service early to aid the transport of goods to Vancouver, said Jason Berry, who's the Vice President of Cargo, in the announcement. In the initial aftermath of the flooding last month, Air Canada quickly increased cargo capacity by 646 tonnes into Vancouver from Toronto, Montreal and Calgary using cargo-only passenger jets, and upsizing to larger aircraft on passenger services to accommodate more belly freight. Railroads in Canada are now operating limited service to the port of Vancouver. Air Canada Cargo will eventually have 8 767-300s in its fleet. The carrier decided to establish a freighter until late last year after successfully pivoting to cargo-only passenger flights during the pandemic and recognising how much e-commerce is boosting air cargo growth. Since March 2020, Air Canada has operated more than 13,000 all-cargo flights globally using its wide-body passenger aircraft, as well as certain temporarily modified Boeing 777 and Airbus A330 aircraft, which have additional available cargo space due to the removal of seats from the passenger cabin. The Boeing 767-300 extended range freighters will allow Air Canada Cargo to offer 5 different main deck configurations, increasing the overall cargo capacity of each aircraft to nearly 64 tonnes or 15,000 cubic feet. 3/4 of the capacity is on the main deck, where passengers used to sit. The freighters will provide consistent capacity to shippers, reducing the chance of shipments being squeezed out by baggage and being held for the next flight. They will also increase Air Canada's capability to transport goods such as automotive and aerospace parts, oil and gas equipment, pharmaceuticals, perishables, as well as e-commerce goods. Well, that's good here, isn't it? Because there's some flexibility going on in the world of the freight operations. And of course, so many of the regular passenger carriers had to revert to cargo operations because they had no passengers in the height of the pandemic. And I think they're still doing a lot of that now, where they can't fill the aircraft with fare-paying passengers.
I think I can see them keeping this for, like, you know, even sort of if we ever are in a position with, like, you know, post-COVID, if that can ever be a thing now. You know, I think a lot of lessons. You know, I mean, they've always been carrying cargo, I suppose, haven't they? I mean, very few airliners that, you know, carrying passengers have not had some kind of mail or parcels in their hull. But I can see more of this happening.
I think based on the past couple of years, Air Canada was like the article said, they were planning on making 8 of their aircraft freighters. But from everything that I've seen now, to all of our Canadian listeners, you know, our thoughts are with you, because Vancouver has been experiencing some terrible floods since just before Thanksgiving here in the U.S. And from what I was reading, actually this weekend, they were supposed to get another couple 100 millimeters of rain. So they're getting some terrible floods up there. And from what I saw, that Air Canada forewent the paint job on this aircraft and just put it right into service. carrying relief supplies out to Vancouver. Additionally, here in the U.S. we have Operation Airdrop, which is a conglomeration of general aviation pilots that gets together and conducts relief flights with their own personal aircraft. That actually happened up in Vancouver over the last couple of weeks also, where especially up there in that part of Canada, there's a lot of remote airstrips, remote towns where the only way in and out, or the best way in and out, is aircraft, especially when roads get washed out, bridges get washed out, and people are donating their own time and aircraft and fuel to get much needed supplies out to those locations. So.
Wow.
Yes. Good stuff. Very good stuff. Well, I think that's where we come to the end of the commercial aircraft segment. So up next, it'll be the military, and we normally have a short break in between those, don't we, Matt?
We do indeed. We'll be back after this very brief message.
Well, welcome to our London studios. Welcome to the A320 Lounge webinar tech presentation, obviously for the 320 series.
Welcome to the A320 and 737 Lounge, bringing technical refresher courses directly to you. Using our cutting-edge broadcasting facilities, enjoy a fully interactive technical refresher course from the comfort of your own home. All of our webinars are live, and you can ask your instructor a question at any point during the day. All of our instructors are highly experienced and can help you. No more expensive nights away from home, no new software required, just an internet connection. Courses are run at regular intervals, so check out A320 Lounge and 737lounge.com for more details.
Okay, guys, so this military story is a little bit, or I guess our military segment's a little bit different this week. Our listener, Sturman, sent in a couple questions this week. One of them was he had seen an uptick in CH-47 and V-22 flights in Europe, and he was wondering if that was in response to the Ukraine situation. And additionally, a follow-up question was, does the U.S. Air Force or the U.S. military plan for these kinds of things, or do they change their training based on current events? So if you guys will bear with me for a little bit here.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'll talk a little bit about it. So the first thing that goes into this, there's a lot of planning. There's a lot of concepts of operations that have already been developed by the U.S. military and its partner combatant commands, in this case, U.S. forces in Europe, right? So this is the U.S. Air Forces in Europe and European Command. It's a joint organization that's responsible for both the security situation, humanitarian, and partner nation capabilities over in Europe. This is not anything new. So the plans are always on the shelf for what to do should there be an incursion from Russia or any other actor. And they're essentially kind of this playbook. Now, inside of that playbook, there may be some parts that you take out, parts that you put in, depending on the actual current events, current situation. But at the end of the day, there are just these overarching concepts of operation, or what we call CONOPS, for each theater. That's all over the world, including the U.S. itself, right? So now, because this is an aviation podcast, we'll kind of stick with the air part of this, the air portion. The Russians have, in their southern military district, they call it their 4th Air Force Command. The headquarters is in Rostov, which is down in that Ukraine region. They've got almost a dozen air bases with Su-24s, Su-25, 26s, MiG-29s, MiG-35s, and then some forward bases with some attack helicopters. Their large fleet of Tu-22s, those aircraft can obviously fly halfway around the world, so they can kind of stay at their home bases but they've also got Tu-160s, Tu-195s based in some other areas in eastern Russia that they can move to the region should they need to. Now, partner nations, that's called an order of battle. Basically, if you think back to the World War II days where there's a command room, if you go to the Churchill War Rooms down there in London, they still had the maps, they still had the tables from when there was a technician that would take this little slider and move basically a chess piece across a map on the table where everybody could look down. We still have those. Obviously, it's all digital now, but for every Russian asset that's out there, partner nations have something to counter that. So Germany, as you know, has tornadoes. They have typhoons. The Ukrainian Air Force itself has a whole fleet of MiG-29s, Su-24s, 25s, 27s. Italy has typhoons, F-35s, and tornadoes. And the Polish Air Force has MiG-29s, Su-22s, and F-16s. So all of these, especially the U.S.-made aircraft, have been provided to these partner nations. And that was just a few of them. There's plenty more in order to counter the threats that the Russians pose, right? Now, the U.S. and the way the U.S. is set up out there, you get the U.S. Air Forces in Europe. And then underneath that, there is Special Operations Command Europe. So the biggest air bases over there are Aviano, Incirlik. I can never pronounce it. We just call it MK. It's in Constanța, Romania. Rota, and then of course all the bases in the UK, Fairford, Lakenheath, Mildenhall, and the big ones in Germany are Ramstein and Spangdahlem. Between all of those bases, you have F-15s, F-16s, KC-135s, C-130s. All of these have been photographed by Jonathan Horner, and in addition to that, you have a forward deployed U-2 base in Akrotiri in Cyprus. As far as rotary wing goes, the U.S. Army has rotary wing assets all over Germany and Italy, and including the Air Force Special Operations Command there in Mildenhall in the east of the UK. So the question was the uptick in activity. It's always a chess game. So with the increased activity on the Russian side of the border, the U.S. Army this week had an exercise that they called Combined Resolve. And this always happened. It happens with exercise Zapad. It happens with exercise Flintlock, where one side does an exercise, the other side does an exercise 2 months later. And inevitably, it's the biggest exercise they've ever done in the region. So just recently, the last couple weeks, based in the Hohenfels training area there in Bavaria, it's a little area between Nuremberg and Regensburg. So the Army's been flying all kinds of stuff. The U.S. Special Operations have been going out there. It's basically a show of force. Each force does this every couple months just to remind the other ones, hey, this is what we do, and we're here, and don't you forget it. Yeah. So Combined Resolve this year included 4,600 soldiers from Bulgaria, Georgia, Greece, Italy, Lithuania, Poland, Serbia, Slovenia, Ukraine, United Kingdom, and the United States. So it's a pretty big exercise. You can rest assured that the Russians were watching it, but the Allied forces knew that the Russians were watching it. So it's kind of this tit for tat type thing. Obviously, there is an increased threat right now of Russia amassing its forces on the border, and there is, I guess we'll just call it increased likelihood for an incursion across the border. Yeah, and then the other question that Sturman had was the training part of it. So we train to those concepts of operations that I was talking about earlier. Those concepts of operations produce what's called mission essential tasks lists. Those medals, mission essential tasks, is essentially what each wing, at least in the Air Force, is manned to. So let's say Lakenheath. The Lakenheath's medals is to deter Russian aggression with fighter air superiority, right? It's not thousands of them. It'll just be a couple medals. All right, and then the Congress and the U.S. Department of Defense says, well, in order to do that, we're going to place F-15s, a couple rescue squadrons at RAF Lakenheath. And then however many airplanes go over there determines how many pilots are going to go over there. How many airplanes and pilots determines how many maintainers, and then how many support personnel, right? So it's for every airplane, you probably have 30 to 40 people on down the line that supports this whole operation. And that's how the U.S. Essentially does its manning for these contingency operations. We train to it. We train to what's unknown, but then we also train to the unknown, which is that's great that we practice, but how would they do it if they were to cross the border? How would they do it differently this time, right? So one of the biggest changes that I've seen over the last 10 years is not just like a tanks rolling across hills type thing. It's not fighter jets shooting at each other in the sky. It includes a cyber portion to that. It includes an information operations portion to combat. So how do you practice those things? Those are the little ConOps, the little pages that you put into the playbook that say, hey, we've never done this before. We're going to practice basically a cyber defensive posture or something to that effect. So the question is yes, the answer is yes. We train to the knowns, but we also adapt and are flexible to train to the unknowns. So Sturman, hopefully that answers your question. Thanks for all the love in the chat room. That's the most I'll speak today.
Wow. Well, as always, fantastic inside info from Armando under very trying circumstances with your voice.
Absolutely, well done. A very concise answer there. So hopefully that answers your question, Sturman. I'm sure it does. But,
yeah, we're not going to ask you any follow-up
no follow-up questions. I think he soldiered on enough. Bless him. Yeah. While he goes and has a sip of his lemon tea,
yes,
and or something stronger.
Jonathan Warner in the chat room says my throat hurts for Armando.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right,
well done, mate. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. And a brilliant explanation as always. Even with a poorly voice, he can still make military sound interesting. I mean, who'd have thought that was possible, Nev?
There you are. I know. I doff my cap.
Absolutely, indeed.
Yeah. Oh,
indeed.
I do have to caveat. All of that is from publicly available sources.
Of course, absolutely. I expect nothing less. Okay.
Yeah, globalsecurity.org has the order of battle. And the Air Force doctrine is publicly available.
Excellent.
So I don't get in trouble with anybody.
I'm glad you mentioned that.
Yes, of course.
So the next story is on the aviationist.com. And it says the UAE signs historic deal with France for 80 Rafale fighter jets. The deal, which also includes Rafale's weapons and 12 Caracal helicopters, is considered the largest contract ever signed for the export of French weapons. France and the UAE signed a historic deal for what has already been defined as the largest ever contract for the export of products of the French combat aviation industry. The deal was inked at the Dubai Expo 2020 on December the 3rd, 2021, obviously, at the presence of the French President Emmanuel Macron and Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan, Crown Prince of Abu Dhabi and Vice Commander of the UAE Armed Forces, and includes 3 contracts valued at €17 billion for a total of 92 aircraft and related weapons. The sale is divided as follows. A first contract worth €14 billion covers the acquisition of 80 Dassault Rafale fighter jets, with a second €28 billion contract for its weapons. The third, worth another billion, is related to the acquisition of 12 Airbus H225M helicopters to be used for combat search and rescue and anti-ship missions. With these contracts, the UAE will become the largest exporter operator of the Rafale and the only operator outside of France to receive the F4 variant. This deal has been in the works for more than a decade, as the UAE were the candidate to become the first export buyer of the Rafale in 2009, when the two governments were in talks for the sale of 60 fighter jets. The UAE are now the sixth export customer of the aircraft, joining Egypt, Qatar, India, Greece and Croatia, bringing the total export orders for the aircraft to 236, which includes both new and second-hand aircraft. First deliveries of the F4 to the UAE are planned for 2027. Also on the aviationist.com, it says that Croatia buys second-hand Rafales from France to replace MiG-21s, and the signing of the contract followed the selection of the aircraft earlier this year after a first acquisition of second-hand F-16s failed in 2019. Croatia signed a government-to-government deal with France worth €999 million for the acquisition of 12 second-hand Dassault Rafale during a ceremony in Zagreb on November 25th this year. The ceremony was attended by the French President Emmanuel Macron and the Croatian Prime Minister, the French Minister of the Armed Forces, and the Croatian Minister the Defence and the CEO of Dassault Aviation, Eric Trappier. The contract reportedly involved 10 single-seater and 2 twin-seater aircraft in the F3R standard, with the first aircraft scheduled to be delivered in 2024 and the remaining ones due the following year. The French jets will allow Croatia to replace its obsolete MiG-21s, of which only a few are still operational out of the 12 total aircraft in service. The Rafale was selected on May the 28th this year following an international competition which saw the French aircraft facing the Saab Gripen, the F-16V Block 70-72, second-hand F-16s from Israel, and according to some sources, even second-hand Eurofighters, Typhoons from Italy. The deal is considered the largest acquisition program since Croatia's independence from the former Yugoslavia. So that is a big deal nonetheless, and it sounds though it's taken a long while to get it there, but that's a big lot of aircraft that's being purchased.
Yeah, absolutely. And what hot off the presses here, as you can always imagine, Jonathan Warner, a nice fresh shiny picture of said variant right there we go. So not as well known not well known as only the French used this particular version. He was he added to that. And he
Caracal.
Is the Caracal. There we go. Right. Very good. That's sorry, because he did write that there, but I wasn't as brave as Nev to have a go at it.
Well, I just wanted to make sure that we're not saying that that's a Rafale fighter.
Oh, I see. Right.
It makes a great target for a Rafale fighter.
Right. I see. Right. Okay. Fair enough. Yeah. Okay. I see what you did there. Okay. All right. We'll move on to the next story then. And
feel free to abridge this one if you want, Matt.
I'll give it a go. It's fine. We'll soldier on. TheDrive.com is the website that this has come from, and the headline is: the wreck of a crashed British F-35 has been pulled out of the Mediterranean. The UK Ministry of Defence says that the wreckage of a Royal Air Force F-35B Joint Strike Fighter that crashed into the Mediterranean Sea shortly after taking off from the Royal Navy aircraft carrier HMS Queen Elizabeth last month has been recovered. Successfully locating the remains of the aircraft and retrieving them had been top priority given the operational security risks that would have been posed if any part of the plane had fallen into the hands of a less than friendly country, such as Russia. The operations to recover the UK F-35 in the Mediterranean Sea have successfully concluded, and there is no danger or compromise to sensitive equipment on the aircraft, a statement from the Ministry of Defence said, which was posted by the Sun newspaper in the United Kingdom. Oh, well, there we are then. It's fine. That outlet said that it had taken 2 weeks to locate the wreck on the sea floor and then another week to successfully bring it up to the surface. The US and Italian navies had also been involved in the search and recovery effort, which was hampered by rough seas, the Sun reports, adding that the wreckage was recovered to a chartered salvaged ship. The Royal Air Force, the RAF, the F-35B from number 617 Squadron, the Dam Busters, had plunged into the Mediterranean on November the 17th this year. For still unknown reasons, the pilot ejected and was recovered safely. An earlier report suggested the aircraft had ingested an air intake blocker that the pilot had unsuccessfully attempted to abort the takeoff after it became clear that the aircraft would not reach sufficient speed to get airborne. But this remains unconfirmed. A video seen in the tweet below, a video seen on a tweet had emerged on social media last week that appeared to show the crash as recorded by a video camera system on HMS Queen Elizabeth, and was in line with that report. The UK Defence Journal published a story earlier today citing anonymous sources saying that the individual who had leaked that video after recording it on their cell phone has now been arrested. The lack of any grounding order following the incident does strongly indicate that British officials already believe that some kind of human error rather than a technical issue with the aircraft was the cause of the mishap. Regardless of the cause of the accident, the aircraft, or at least the bulk of what is left of it, are now safely back in the hands of the UK government. As the War Zone previously reported, the remains of an F-35 of any type could have been an intelligence windfall for a potential adversary, especially if the aircraft could be recovered largely intact. Similar concerns have been raised after a Japanese F-35A crashed in the Pacific Ocean in 2019. At least some of the wreckage of that jet was left at the bottom of the sea. Russia, with its fleet of deep-diving special mission submarines, as well as the deep-sea salvage ship, there we go. Sorry, sorry. I just realised I've done all that with the wrong camera up, haven't I? Sorry.
No, it was switching on you.
Oh, was it? Okay.
I'll basically save you from the rest of the story here. Russia does have some deep diving capabilities, deep recovery capabilities, and it was a pretty fast and furious operation to recover this aircraft, as you guys can imagine. This would have been, and so there's different variants of these aircraft and different capabilities with electronic warfare, and the UK basically gets the same version as the US. Right. So it would have been bad news had the Russians gotten a hand on this.
I see. So, that makes more sense now, because I was sort of thinking I wasn't quite sure why the relevance of certain adversaries, shall we say, sort of getting their hands on it was such a concern. But I mean, presumably with an incident like this, there must have been some, if they were fairly sure they knew where it had ended up, if you like, there must have been security in the area. Presumably. Yeah, for sure. That ship probably stopped right there. But then the question was, how do they get it? I thought it was really interesting in that article that they arrested the person who leaked the video. That's a big operational security concern. Yeah, absolutely. And it was probably a member of the Royal Navy. Yeah, absolutely. With videotaping the security camera on the airplane. I'm sure the Royal Navy didn't want that to get out. No, absolutely not. Well, and of course at this stage, whilst the official findings haven't been publicly released, if you see what I mean, and I'm sure there will be an element of public release at some point where they may in fact offer that video as the reason behind it, etc., etc. I mean, it's technically that video is evidence in an incident, isn't it? So therefore not in the public record at this stage. Well, the idea that a sailor recorded that off of the security camera and then posted it to social media, that's a no-go. Career limiting, I would say. Career limiting is the word we're looking for. Yep. Yeah, absolutely. Yep. Also, a moment of, frankly, stupidity on that person's part. I mean, presumably they must have had some kind of, Can't cure stupid. Yeah, fair point. Yes, absolutely. That is true. But it's good news that it's been recovered. And as I say, perhaps more information will be available on that. Although I think reading between the lines, it seems quite well, perhaps not quite clear, but I think most people are under the impression they know what happened. As it said in the article, the fact that the aircraft wasn't immediately grounded, like all of them, rather suggests that, as it said in the article, human error rather than mechanical.
Well, you can do an accountability and count how many engine intake covers you have left on the deck. You shouldn't be missing any, and if you're missing one,
and then a plane fell in the sea, that's probably your answer, isn't it?
So
Absolutely.
Pretty short investigation.
Yes, indeed. Absolutely. Well, but I dare say there'll be some other box ticking that has to take place, I guess, with this.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Are you up for the last one then, Armando? Are you all right?
We can all tackle it together. But,
okay. All right.
This one is just for Jonathan Warner.
Is it? Oh dear.
And all of our
I'm terrified
friends
already.
of the show. No, this is actually for Nick, for all of our friends of the show that are photogs and love to take pictures of airplanes. On the 7th and 8th of December, this story is actually from the RAF. Members of the RAF's photographic profession welcome photographers and media officers from the Irish Air Corps Defence Press and the United States Air Force Combat Camera Team from Lakenheath to Bryce Norton for exercise Allied Lens. I would venture to say that the Russians were not tracking this exercise. What is first for the RAF and the photographic trade? The exercise started with photographers working on Chinook helicopters from 27 Squadron based at RAF Odium, who were at Bryce Norton working with the RAF's Medical Emergency Response Team. They were moving exercise casualties to the hospital. Working with this aircraft, really any helicopter, provided a unique challenge to the photographers due to extreme downwash created by the rotors, coupled with the cold weather. Hey, it's England in December. And the activity that the photographers had never captured before. This resulted in all of them being in an unfamiliar situation. Working alongside an aircraft they had little knowledge of, in a location they didn't know, truly pushing them outside of their comfort zones. So from there, they went on to RAF Bryce Norton's runway 25, where despite the weather, they had a chance to witness that massive C-17 Globemaster flown by 99 Squadron, arriving from RAF Akrotiri in Cyprus. Now, being this close to a live runway gave the visiting photographers an appreciation of the size of the aircraft, but also the need to be fully aware of their surroundings. This gave all the photographers a chance to share their knowledge, hints, tips, best practices, and of course, working with different units promotes best practice both in terms of aerial tasking and day-to-day operations, while strengthening their relationships with the Allied forces. So there you go. The reason we put that in there, other than this is like Jonathan's dream job, is to be.
He'll be annoyed he wasn't there. Absolutely.
Right. I mean, all of these military photographers should take a lesson from him, to be honest.
Yeah, absolutely.
They did get some, what he would say, adequate pictures. They were okay. No, this is a unique thing. This is you might think, why do we have photographers? It's important to document history. It's important to document these contingency operations for the history books, especially nowadays in the digital age. But if you look back, some of these documentaries going back to World War II, how important was it to capture those images, and now they're all being remastered, and it's really important as that generation dies off to memorialize their accomplishments and everything that they did. So these combat photographers are important, just most recently in the Afghanistan situation, right? You deploy a combat camera team to document the situation. That may turn into just for historical purposes, for training purposes, or legal purposes even. But it's really important to capture history in the military and in our overseas and contingency operations, because otherwise the story would never get out, and at the end of the day, it's your taxpayer money, right? It's your taxes that are paying for this military operations. It's my taxes, and it's good to have the military publish in picture format, if nothing else. What it is that they're doing with your money.
So, as you might imagine, Mr. Warner has been in touch, and he says, I have been to Oldham photographing the Chinooks, and as if by magic, there we go, look. So he's been. I believe what he's trying to say there, very politely, essentially, is yawn, been there, done that. I think is what he's.
Look at that picture.
I mean, it's just ridiculous, isn't it? Oh, he's such a talented individual. I hate him.
I can't tell the difference between the professional photographers and.
Well, no, he is a professional photographer.
Quite often when I'm driving down the A34, and there's some exercises going on towards Odium, or around that area at least, the whole, even though there's no traffic jam particularly, all the cars slow
Everything
down.
slows down, absolutely.
Look at these low-level
I can imagine.
Chinooks going over. And boy, do they make a racket.
Indeed.
Sure.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Well, I think a little polite ripple and a round of applause, I think, needs to go for Armando there. Thank you so much for soldiering on there. Thank you very much for your first answering Sturman's questions there. That was genuinely very fascinating. Thank you for being here and doing that. I'm sure that was greatly appreciated. If you have any questions for Armando, perhaps for another military segment, why not send it in? Park. I nearly gave out the. I nearly gave out the wrong email. I mean, you can send it to studio@parkradio.co.uk if you like. May confuse some of the other on-air team. But why not use podcast@planetalkinguk.com? That would be far better. I think you have access to that now as well, don't you, Armando? So you should be able to see.
I much prefer to answer questions and just kind of
absolutely
for military stories.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, so we are an interactive show here. So get your comments in or questions in for Armando, and he will do his level best to answer it. Podcast@planetalkinguk.com. Well,
Excellent
there
stuff.
we go.
We've not got much else to talk about, except possibly just a quick reminder of the 400th show.
Yes.
Which feels as though it's ages away, but of course it's not.
No, I don't think it is. It's not far away at all, is it?
Not at all. So it's Saturday, the 26th of February, 2022, at the Brooklands Museum, Weybridge in Surrey. That's just to the southwest of Heathrow. And if you would like to attend, you need to send us an email to podcast@planetalkinguk.com to register your interest. We have got limited numbers, but we'll certainly see if we can accommodate you if you would like to come. Also, we're going to be having a day full of surprises and maybe the odd special guest here and there, but we'd also like to hear from you about what you would like to see there, as well as all very well us churning stuff out. But it would be quite interesting for us to hear from you, dear listeners and viewers, about the sort of things that you'd like to see at that event.
Absolutely.
And, let's see if we can make some of those things happen.
Let's not forget here, the whole reason that we've got to 400 episodes is literally because of you guys downloading and watching the show every single week. So we would love to make sure that we're ticking all the boxes when it comes to the 400th, which we're very, very excited to bring you. And if you've got any ideas about what you would like us to do at that event, as Nev says, make sure you get in touch. It's podcast@planetalkinguk.com.
Excellent stuff. So, yes, we'll be planning for that. Well, we're planning for that all the time.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah,
it's an endless task.
Yes, Armando's even bought his plane tickets already.
He has.
Yeah, don't go do anything crazy like locking down your country. Or
don't open that can of worms. Absolutely.
Yeah. Bring the whole family over, because really, who doesn't want to go to England in February?
Well, quite. Yeah, that's the thing, isn't it? There's going to be these various airlines who are thinking, why are so many people booking flights to London? Like, what's wrong with them? But yes, you see the importance of the PTUK 400th. That's what it is. Yeah. As things stand at the moment here in the UK, there is no reason why it can't go ahead. Obviously, the only major requirement at the moment, of course, is the having a mask. But obviously, we'll keep you up to date as we get a bit nearer to February, because everything could change between between now and then. We might even, things might even be an awful lot better by the time we get there. So that's one of the reasons why we're not sort of like firming up our final details, if you like, until we get a little bit nearer. But please do register your interest at podcast@planetalkinguk.com to get yourself on the guest list, because we do have limited spaces, and once it's full, it's full. So yeah, if you haven't registered your interest already and would like to attend us in February, do it now.
Absolutely. So don't forget, if you want to search for us on social media, search for Plane Talking UK on Facebook, Twitter or Instagram. Our WhatsApp number is +44 757 2249 That's +44 757 2249 email is podcast@planetalkinguk.com, and the website is www.planetalkinguk.com. You can also subscribe to our YouTube channel. You'll get notifications for when we go live, and of course you can help shape the conversation of the show by joining us in the chat room, as so many have done tonight. And if you want to go to YouTube for that, go to youtube.com/Plane Talking UK. Also on our website there is an Amazon link. If you would like to do your Amazon shopping on there, we get a small referral fee for you doing that. And also don't forget, why not become a Patreon, and details of how you can do that are also on our website as well. And of course we very much value all of your efforts in supporting the show, so thank you very much to everybody who does that.
Indeed. I think that's where we need to wrap the show up, if only for Armando's sake, let's be honest. So, thank you very much to everyone who has joined us today. And do we dare allow Armando to do this?
Well, Dr. Steph just joined the chat room.
Oh, is she? Just in time to finish.
Well, no, it's funny because I was supposed to go help Dr. Steph with some household duties down on her end of the lake. And I bailed on her because I wasn't feeling so well. So there you go.
Okay.
There's proof. There's proof.
Visual proof. Yeah. Absolutely, that she's not. That he's not. And we can confirm he's a bit poorly, bless him. Which is why we're wrapping up half an hour earlier than we often do. Just literally, the poor guy needs a rest. Thank you, but seriously,
Let's
Armando.
just say that I have the improve my appearance filter all the way.
Oh, good, right. Okay, yeah. It's all about the lighting, the red face on this occasion. Yeah, absolutely. We're going to wrap things up then. Armando, if you can manage it, then please do say goodbye to our wonderful people.
Yeah, thanks for hanging in there with us. We'll get back to some regular length shows at some point, but everybody take care of yourselves, stay safe, stay healthy.
Cheers guys, bye-bye.